because then I think it hurts. If you think you can do anything and you don't do it, that's going to hurt your self-worth. That's going to hurt your self-esteem. I think the ultimate goal is to figure out, what is my unique human capability and how do I continue extending that?
Think accurately about what's possible for you. Think accurately about how the world works, why it works that way, etc., etc., etc. Now, here's the cool thing about our listeners. Most of you actually believe in yourselves less than you probably should.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1109. Is agree to disagree a bad thing for a relationship? Today, for episode number 1110, a piece of advice that may be hurting you. I was on a podcast the other day, and somebody asked me a question, Alan, that I would answer very, very differently 5 years ago. They said, based on what you've accomplished, based on the team and the podcast and the business, do you believe that anything is possible for everybody? Is anybody out there, so anybody who's listening to this podcast, are they capable of accomplishing their dreams? And I said, oh man, you're really gonna put me on the spot here. I said, 5 years ago, I would say anybody is capable of anything. And I said, honestly, now, based on the things that I've seen, based on my experiences, based on the people I've met, based on some of the circumstances I've seen people have to endure, I think that blanket statement is actually disempowering. And here's why. Alan and I grew up as white men in the freest country on the planet. That right there gives us opportunities that other people may never get. So this is kind of my thought is, could somebody that has all of the disadvantages out there succeed at the highest level and become everything they ever want to? Yes, they could. Statistically, though, what are the odds of that happening? That's what I tried to explain during this interview. I said, statistically speaking, it would be very hard for me to say, well, yeah, anybody can do anything. Because if I do give that advice and say 1,000 people hear that, maybe 1 out of those 1,000 people are actually going to be able to accomplish their goals at the highest level. And what really, and again, this should be a quick episode because Alan has a coaching call, but it's kind of a heavy episode because there's a lot of truth in an episode like this, and I want to make sure that Alan and I are giving it in a balanced way. I have changed the way I coach podcasters because I realize that most podcasters that I work with will never be able to win at the level that we do. And I always explain it. I say, number 1, this is my job. Number 2, I have a business partner who works 7 days a week. Number 3, there's 2 of us. Right? Number 4, Alan has a genius brain and a business background and an understanding of math. I'll work as hard as it takes. I've been broke. We have an awesome team. There's so many things that have had to happen in order for us to get where we are. We've been coached and mentored by some of the greatest minds on the planet for free. Much of that is because of Alan. So when I'm giving advice to people, I try to do it from a statistical place of the odds of you getting a mentor like a David Meltzer or an Evan Carmichael for free are just so low, that's probably not going to happen. And if I give you advice based on what we've done and tell you, yeah, you can definitely do what we've done, I think it's disempowering. I really do, because not everybody can. That's like somebody in the NFL saying, yeah, you could become an NFL quarterback. It's like, well, as long as you're over 5'11", and I think that's like short for an NFL quarterback, and you can throw a tight spiral 60 yards, and also remember 75 plays. I think that's somewhat disempowering. Now, if you're 3 years old listening to this, I don't know if you'd even understand what we're saying, but yeah, maybe things are a little bit different for you because
Goo Baba.
You're so young that you really have a lot more of your future in your own hands. But I don't know. It's a hard episode to talk about because the last thing I want to do is take the wind out of anybody's sails. But at the same point, I also want to make sure that we're not just making you feel good about what's possible for you. I want you to leave here better, not just feeling good about you and your journey. I want you to leave here and say, you know what, I learned this today that I'm going to use in my life moving forward. And I just think there's a lot of stuff out there that is, you can do anything you set your mind to. You can, all of those things. And okay, this is the last thing I'll say. And I really want you to listen to this part, because I can't talk about other people's experiences as well as I can talk about my own. If I didn't go to school with Alan and play spin the bottle with him and the popular kids and the popular girls and whatever grade it was,
5th grade,
and have him, and
or
have him.
I don't know. I think
just,
it was 5th. It was 5th.
Just let me tell the rest of the story.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. And he didn't have me on his podcast. I didn't have him on my podcast. I would not be this successful. And I really want you to think about that. I got very, I don't want to say lucky, because I've obviously worked my face off and I've been as humble as I can, and I'm learning and all that. But I wouldn't be able to give any advice because I wouldn't be successful, and you wouldn't know my name, and this podcast wouldn't be a thing because I would have quit a long time ago. The fact that I have that unique opportunity is very, very rare. There's only one of Alan, and he's only going to have one partner like he does, and that happens to be me. So 1 out of 7 point whatever billion. The odds of that happening are so astronomically low that if I said that could happen for somebody else, I just think it would be a disservice. And I want to humbly say that because I think it's important. And the last thing I want to do is, again, take the wind out of somebody's sails, but I also don't want to put wind into somebody's sails that is beyond what they're capable of flying towards, because then I think it hurts. If you think you can do anything and you don't do it, that's going to hurt your self-worth. That's going to hurt your self-esteem. I think the ultimate goal is to figure out, what is my unique human capability and how do I continue extending that? I think that's the measure. And I'll end on that.
It's fire, man. This concept I believe in deeply, and I know we only have 10 minutes here, so I'll try to be as brief as I can about this. And thank you for the kind words, by the way. Really appreciate that. I think that at the end of the day, and Kevin and I were talking about this episode for a while, masterminding before we recorded, we often do, and we were talking about how our podcast is a lot more about trying to help people actually get better than it is helping them feel better. And I think that if we were to say, yeah, you can do anything you set your mind to, it might feel good to say that, and that's motivational, but it's not accurate. And I'll use me as an example. I'm not going to beat Michael Phelps at swimming, no matter how hard I try. I'm not going to beat Phil Heath. He's the most successful bodybuilder in history at bodybuilding, no matter how hard I try, no matter how many decades I put in. Because genetically speaking, Michael Phelps' wingspan is apparently 4 inches longer than his height, and it's a very unique thing. And I take nothing from Michael Phelps. He also had a very, apparently no childhood and just worked for, a dozen years for 27 gold medals. And if you don't know who Michael Phelps is, everyone probably knows who Michael Phelps is. But I think it's disempowering, to Kevin's point. There is such thing as empowering beliefs being disempowering. I ask this question all the time. You've heard me say it on the podcast. I ask this to Emilia constantly. What is the disempowering belief? What is the limiting belief that has disguised itself as empowering?
One of the questions we get asked most often is, what is my purpose and how do I figure out what I really want to do with my life?
And even if you're one of the few who do know what you really want, you might not know the steps to accomplish it, or even worse, you might not believe you can.
There's a bunch of people and programs out there that are trying to show you the easiest way, but not necessarily the best way for you.
Next Level Group Coaching is not only a place where you will understand yourself at a deeper level, but you'll also understand how everything you're learning applies specifically to you, to your life, and to your goals.
The Next Level You family is built on understanding, inclusiveness, and creating a supportive environment where you can always be your authentic self.
Many programs like this are literally thousands of dollars. Ours is not only more affordable than that, but with our 6-month payment plan, it's less than $100 per month.
And by the end of the first call, you'll have definite, clear, and specific goals. And by the end of the program, you'll have the exact daily steps to accomplish them, or your money back.
At this point, our group coaching program has graduated dozens of people from all over the world. We only take 10 at a time, and honestly, we cannot guarantee the price will stay the same for future groups.
Now, there are a ton of reasons you should do this now, but the biggest one is that the version of you you're working so hard on becoming is waiting.
And that question is really good because, you can do anything you set your mind to. It sounds really empowering on the surface, but you might as well put that on a fortune cookie. That's not true. I'm not going to be the most successful bodybuilder in the world. It's very hard for me to put on muscle. And I'm 33 years old. You know what I mean? If I decide today to be more successful than the most successful bodybuilder in the world, that's not even possible for me. No matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, it's not possible. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, scientifically, it's not possible. Just like dancers, right? What is it in the Olympics? I was reading a book recently. Decoding Greatness is the name of this book. It's all about reverse engineering finish lines. And there's Olympic balance beam dancers. I can't pretend to know a lot about this. Gymnasts, yeah, gymnastics. Mm-hmm. And apparently anywhere between 4'10" and 5'4" is like the optimal height for a female gymnast. And I'm going off the book, so don't quote me on this. But I'm 6'2". So let's say I want to be a successful gymnast. Like, no. Now, I can be a successful gymnast at the local level, maybe, if I put in a lot of work. But I'm not going to be an Olympic gold medalist. And I think that there's something empowering about being accurate in your thinking. Kevin and I do not want to disempower anyone. We want to empower you with accurate thinking. When we say truth, that's really what we mean. Think accurately about yourself. Think accurately about what's possible. Think accurately about what's possible for you. Think accurately about how the world works, why it works that way, etc., etc., etc. Now, here's the cool thing about our listeners. Most of you actually believe in yourselves less than you probably should. So there's probably more possibilities out there for you than most of you think. And that's statistically what I've found with all the people I coach. It's usually, we talk about drive to 5. The low end of drive to 5 are people who struggle with confidence and courage. The people on the high end of drive to 5 have an inflated view of self, who think they're better than they really are. And because of that, they essentially, the low end of drive to 5 is afraid to get a mentor, doesn't believe they deserve a mentor. The high end of drive to 5 doesn't think they need a mentor. That kind of thing. Doesn't need a coach. If you are on the low end of drive to 5, most likely you are capable of more than you think you are. But that doesn't mean you are capable of an Olympic gold medal in the next decade. Olympic gold medal, and the reason I love that analogy is that presupposes that you are better than everyone else on Earth. We interviewed an Olympic gold medalist. His name was Tyree Washington, right? Mm-hmm. He did the 4-person relay for the 400 meter, right? Mm-hmm. Tyree Washington is super, super fast, has been running since he was a kid, is genetically gifted in many ways. The circumstances that statistically have to line up for that to happen are very, very important to understand. And for all of our listeners out there, I just want you to hopefully understand this concept of what this episode is about, which is survival bias. How can you look at these successful people that are accomplishing these really incredible things, and how do you factor in some of the factors that are somewhat outside of your control? So, for example, right place, right time. I often joke with my clients, and I'll ask them a simple question. I'll say, how much would Michael Jordan have been paid to play basketball in the 1800s? And they think for a second, and they're like, well, no money. And I said, exactly. Why is that? There's no market for basketball. No one cares about basketball in the 1800s, from my understanding. I don't even think the sport existed. I don't really know. But yeah, so hopefully by the end of this episode, you can think a little more accurately about yourself, a little bit more accurately about what you really want, a little bit more accurately about the process that will help you achieve that. And at the end of the day, Kevin and I would rather you actually learn something valuable that you can apply to your life than to feel good in this particular moment.
And if you can make it empowering, then that's one thing. But I do find a lot of people, it's very hard to chase a goal that you don't believe is ultimately possible. It's just very hard. And we're trying to look at it from a statistical. So this is the example I'll use, and then Alan, we got to let you go. Could I if I tried super hard when I was younger, could I have played in the NFL? Sure. We'll just say I could, okay? My height, my weight, the fact that I'm blind in one eye, I have a lot of things going against me, right? Definitely. And there's very few players my size who have ever made it to the NFL. Even fewer have actually been successful. I can think of a couple, but again, they might have been more genetically gifted than me. Okay, just think of these stats for a second. There are 1.1 million high school football players in the United States. 6.5% of them go on to play in college. So just say 71,000 of them go on to play in college. After college, only 1.2% of college-level players will get drafted into the NFL. So just think of that.
Well, what's 1.2% of the 75,000?
Oh, man, probably, 7,000.
Okay.
Oh, no, 700.
Yeah.
10% would be 7,100.
Yeah. So it would be 700 people.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that's not even saying they actually play.
And that's not global. That's just the U.S.
Yeah.
That's just the U.S., which is only one of the countries.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's American football, so
that's
it's
not
the most
guaranteeing that's not guaranteeing that you'll actually play.
Right. That
Right?
could
Like,
be
that
bench
doesn't-
players.
Yeah, that means you get to the NFL.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want you to think is this is a disempowering episode, but I really want to make sure, I think that's what we are. We are the type of podcast, we are the two of the people that want to see you win. I'd rather you say, you know what, that kind of sucks to know, but now I can make better decisions. That's ultimately the goal. Raise your awareness, and then when you raise your awareness, you have different options, and you have different understandings, and you can go in different directions. Okay, we do have to go. Next Level Nation, October 4th, 2022. Number 8 of group coaching starts. Please join us if you're interested in. Again, we have a bunch of payment plans to make it as affordable as possible. We are set up as a business based on value. We want to make sure we're adding value, and not everybody can afford things right off the bat, so we have a bunch of payment plans to make sure you can.
Also, we are reading a book in book club called Switch by Dan and Chip Heath. At this point, we have over 48 members of book club, and around 10 to 15 people every single week come in and they read the book and they're reading the chapter. You can listen in even if you haven't read the chapter. You can keep your camera off, listen in, you can stay muted, or you can be involved. The registration link will be in the show notes. We hope to see you there. At the very least, what I can tell you is you're going to be you're going to learn a lot in book club, not just from me, but from everyone else in book club and obviously from the books.
Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number 1111. Staying committed when times get rough. I have an interesting story about that really helped me break something free. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.